Howdy, Trip here. I'm making this video just to give back to the community. Don't want anything from it monetarily or even attention-wise. Thus the mask, plus, you know, the virus. But you're here to learn kerfing. It's really easy, guys. I mean, now, it's about to be. When I set out to learn it back in January, I really couldn't find anything that spoke to me on YouTube. I mean, that I could learn from, that I had an epiphany after watching. No offense to anyone who made that content, bless you for doing it, right? It just didn't speak to my ADD riddled mind. So I had to strike out and figure it out for myself. And my goal initially was to kerf in hardwood, not plywood. I remember the plywood stuff from my youth. It was gorgeous, but the kerf stuff, the kerf furniture, but didn't really see any hardwood kerfs. But hardwood kerfing's been around for longer than even plywood. It's been around for centuries. So I'm not the one that invented this. I'm certainly not the one that invented this method I'm going to show you. There's probably somebody else using it on YouTube that I didn't find before. But I think that judging from how successful I've been teaching people in real life kerfing, I think it's these process that I've got going here will get you going a lot faster than what I found. Now that's what I found. Your searching might be better, but I know how to. Yeah. Just take it my word on it. I know Boolean searches, but let's get started. Okay, what do you need? First and foremost, I'd recommend a flat, kerfed rip blade. This is a Freud heavy-duty rip. It'll give you a flat kerf. A kerf is these slices in the wood, right? And just a side note here, this material is geared towards intermediate plus woodworkers. I'm not going to break down the mundane. I'm not going to give you a montage shot of me using a drill press or any of that. We're going to assume that you understand a few things, one of them being what kerfing is, but still. The secret to these, I want to explain why you need a flat too, is that, right? See that thin strip of material? It is an even thin strip along all these kerfs. It's about a millimeter, and which is good for prototype. You know, I wouldn't use that thickness for a final piece that I was going to finish. Won't leave you a lot to work with, but it certainly looks good here. You know, and for prototyping, this works great because we can bend it immediately, you know, for practicing and showing you that. For those cherry trapezoidal end tables I made recently, I left 1.5 millimeters, and that allowed me plenty of room to finish and sand. But in order to bend those, I had to wet them over the course of 2 or 3 hours, miss them 2 or 3 times, and come back and slowly rock them in place. Slowly bend them, 30 minutes per side of each end cap. So, you know, 2 hours to do it all. So it didn't crack. Otherwise you could crack. Now poplar is really forgiving. It's a stringy hardwood. So 1 millimeter, and then you'll see we're about to do it. You will be able to bend immediately. So flat bottom kerf blade, that's important. These are just the tools you need. You need digital calipers, I'd recommend. They're really cheap, but if you don't have those, you can just use like a ruler that has demarks for millimeters, you know. I use a combination of both myself. I use this for marking when I'm trying to dial in my blade height, and this for checking that blade where the material to leave, you know, what's left over after I made a kerf, test kerf, right? You know, this way we dial it in, and we don't need this again, you know, as long as it's dialed in, and then you lock your blade, you know. So, you know, ruler with millimeters, digital calipers. What else you need? Of course, a pencil, something to make straight lines on wood. In this case, a square pencil. You know, one of these things, odds are you have a bunch of those things. Some wood to kerf, and very important, an offcut of that same piece of wood. And this is just the other end of this, right? Needs to be milled from the same batch, needs to be the same exact thickness. You know, you need to make sure that it is the same, right? We wanted, otherwise these test kerfs are not going to be one for one. So, you know, a little scrap this size will do, you know, once you get the hang of it, right? You only need to make maybe 2 passes before you dial it in. And it's just like getting like setting a blade height for some odd depth dado is exactly what it's like if you're going to do it with a flat kerf saw. You know, you would just slowly work it into place. You could do anything you wanted. You can set up your setup blocks, whatever you wanted. This wood is, what is its total thickness? .7 millimeters, so a tad north of 3/4. So, you know, we're just going to want to have our blade height off the deck, come up to within, say, 1 mil. Looks a little high. That looks like it might, but that looks a little high. Let's see. So here you can see that we're obviously a little too high there. So I'm going to just come down here. Not that much. There we go. Lock the blade in place. This is the piece we're going to kerf here in a second. So we're just going to cut a test piece in there. Get this out of the way. Not turn it on the vac. It makes too much noise for this. That'll work. Look how high. Yeah, we're right at 1 mil. Perfect. All right, that's the test kerf. We're good. 1 mil, good. We can set this aside, use it for something else, whatever. All right. So, setting your blade height. You're not going to get it like that the first time, guaranteed. Take a little while. So just slowly dial it in. You'll have to make a few cuts, and I would suggest that every time you do dial it in, that you lock your height adjustment in place, and just so it doesn't move accidentally. So what do we do with this knowledge? Well, you know, so now we know that it is this flat bottom kerf blade that actually is the secret to making a good kerf that can be bent without cracking. All right, setting the height on a offcut of the same piece of wood we're going to kerf, very important. The next thing is spacing of said kerfs, and this is my jig that makes it much easier, right? Gives you uniform kerf spacing. That's very important. It's very important aesthetically for the end tables I made. It'll be very important for anything you do if you want to make these identical pieces. And this is also very simple. So, you know, flat bottom kerf, that's required, something to measure, but this is required, and this is required. You need to have a miter gauge or crosscut sled. The same thing I'm talking about applies there. It does not matter. I have both. I have a crosscut sled that's done for this, for longer pieces. For short pieces like this, I just find the miter gauge is good. And I use and have for some time, used 2x4s for my sacrificial fence. They've been jointed and planed and ripped on the edges, and that's it. So it's just so it transfers the reference surface from the back of the front of the miter gauge to the back of the fence to the front of the fence properly, right? And then I'll cut a kerf in it, like whatever height, doesn't matter, okay? And then I'll take this off, okay? Take it over to my drill press, and I will drill a 90-degree hole exactly, so that the drill bit, when embedded in this hole, it's about 3/4 of an inch deep. It's exactly 1/8 of an inch from that kerf blade, not from the kerf cut. That's it. That's your uniform spacing. We leave this off for the first cut. We put it on for the next cut. So we got one more outside cut to do. So let's do that. All right, and on this board, I've just arbitrarily decided that 3.5 inches from each end, inside from 3.5 inches from each end, is where I want my first kerf to be for both sides. and then we're going to do a 90 degree at each end, bend it, and then glue it in place. Okay, so I've took the liberty of doing one already, so we're going to do the next one. And so what I'll do is, since I don't know if you can see this, got this little arrow pointing that way, and you do you. That's to tell me I want to start the kerf on this side. There's another matching one over here. So, and as you can see, that line is like right to the inside of, I mean, the kerf is just inside that line. So you do you, whatever you want. I only mark the top of the boards, not the bottoms. It doesn't matter. No amount of tape will prevent tear out. The only thing that will prevent tear out is a sharp blade. I'll say that 3 more times probably. Okay, now we have our 2 kerfs on the underside. It's going to bend. They're at even distances. Now we're going to put a symmetrical 90-degree bend in them. As long as I lined up those cuts right, but if not, we'll just trim them even. So let's see. Get my drill bit. Put it in the hole. I take my first kerf, slot it in there, and for a 90 degree, just remember 9 gets you 90 at 1/8. An 1/8 of an inch space, 9 kerfs will bend to 90 degrees. 9 will get you 90. We'll do the other odd non-90 angles in another video, and we'll make that piece that I showed in the Instagram post in that video. But right now we're just going to do something that you can, at the finish of this, I want you to have kerfed something. I want you to hold something that you've kerfed to see how easy it is, okay? All right, we're going to do 9 kerfs, and then I'm going to flip it over and do 9 kerfs on this side, all right? Won't take a second. Flip it over, do it again. One thing you probably noticed, I would lift the piece I'm kerfing off of the miter sled on the other side of the blade, and I would always push it all the way through and do that. You don't want to hit that, you don't want to resaw, you don't want to have to resaw even backwards any of these kerfs. I've had problems where, sometimes that would just be enough to make it crack, whatever. We're just going one pass. And so I've got 9 on each side, all right? And that will give us a 90-degree bend with this much space, like a shelf or something. So we're going to get some, I'm going to just walk over here and get a couple kinds of CA glue and an activator. Be right back. Should have already had them here. Okay. I prefer Star Bond, you use whatever you want. Star Bond's never done me wrong. And I need some tape. Let's see. There we go. And this is really easy. The thing about these kerfs, as long as you line them up properly, and as long as you space them properly, as long as you cut them cleanly, all you have to do is make sure they're all closed, and you guarantee a square piece. So my blade, because this ain't the first time I've done a run through of one of these here kerfing videos over the last few days, is now very dull, and I don't have a sharpened one. So I'm just trying to clean it up a little bit, mainly because I don't want all the super glue to be sucked up by all these fibers, you know, or as few as possible. Also, guys, this is the last chance you'll ever get to sand this. I mean, properly. So have at it. That's one thing I'd highly recommend, is sanding at least up to 180 before you start kerfing a final piece. Otherwise, it's just going to be a lot of work. All right. So you notice this tear out on the back side? You see that? Yeah, you can. It's on this other side too. See, I flipped them over, right? That is from a dull blade, and this is why a sharp blade is so important. If we were going to then make this a final piece, we'd have no choice but to rip about a 1/16 off of each side to get rid of that tear out. And that's fine. That'll work as long as you put a piece of 1/4-inch plywood, double-side tape, or hell, you know, even like hot glue it, okay? With this in the flat position before you've ever bent these kerfs, 90% of the time that'll work. But there's going to be a 10% where you're going to chip out the kerfs, right? So anything you can do to reduce that, or reduce it to the point where you can just sand it, would be ideal. We'll talk about edge effects and stuff later on. Maybe you're going to do those anyway. Or maybe you're one of the bright folks who I'm counting on that figures out a way to nicely fill these kerfs when they're closed with a nice crystal clear, translucent dyed epoxy that would both glue them and offer support, and then allow edge effects to be cut in afterwards, okay, with a router. That'd be awesome. Looking for you. All right, so how do we get this from here? So we've got our 9 kerfs on each side. 9 will get you 90. So all we do is just, in this case, we're going to bend slowly. I want to make sure that it's an even bend. I want it to be bending everywhere the same amount. All right, boom, 90 degrees. Okay, that's the first bend. It's a little stiff. We'll get a piece of tape. I don't know how it's going to work. Here, we'll have to tape the other one to this one, so we're going to have to bend the other one. All right, same thing. Now remember, this is a mill. We can bend this without wetting it. Anything thicker, which you'd want to use for a finished piece, you're going to have to wet first. So the only reason we're doing it this way, see, there we go, 90. All right. Only reason we're doing it this way is just because it's quick. And it's poplar. Who cares? The least respected of hardwoods. I respect only honest hardwoods, and poplar is not one. All right, so what I'm doing is just going to clamp one end to the other. Here we go. Just going to pull it up like this. I'm going to pull until all these kerfs are closed, and boom. All right, what I'm looking for, like, I don't know what happened there. It's a little bit of gap, but all the others are closed, so I think that's a saw fuck up, or some kind of, from the saw more so than anything else. You can see on this side, that is just clean as can be. All right, so I do it in 2 stages. Okay, like I'm going to put pressure a little bit on the top to make sure these are closed. I'm going to do thin CA first, and I'm going to do it in the closed position, and I'm just going to put it across, let it wick into those kerf slot, the tiny little spaces between the kerfs, soak down in there. Just keep it until you've got all of those lines are wet now. You know, all those seams are wet all the way up to the edge with the thin. That's fine. Make sure that we get that. All right, let it soak in. Come back with the medium and do the same thing, just like that. And boom, 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 boom. All right. Grab a piece of something, paper. There we go. This will work. And just spread it out a bit so it's not all pulled up, and you know that'll be a pain to sand out later. A little more pressure on. Freeze it. Hold it for 20 seconds or so, and let it set. Now, you can do this any way you want. You could do this with wood glue, Elmer's glue. I don't care. I don't care how you do it, but I do it with CA like this. And then, the only thing I remember, it's as fragile as eggshells right now. Okay? And will be until you get a back panel into it, or front, whatever. Until you put some kind of support into it, it's going to be fragile as eggs. If I can't figure out the epoxy thing yet, my main problem is bubbles. I plan on using fiberglass to reinforce these insides for the long term. All right, so we did that one. We'll do the other one. Same way. We're going to do thin first. Let it soak in. All the kerfs. And this stuff will just disappear into the wood, even if there wasn't a kerf line to use. The thin's really good for wicking into tiny cracks, just filling cracks and stuff in wood. Watch Polly Sellers, the man's of God, the living God. Learned it from him. All right, it's in there good, okay? Come back with the medium, and this I can just put in a line up there, maybe one in the middle, spread it with this piece of paper, and then hit it with the free spray. Okay, wait 20 seconds, and then I can let it go. Huh, 20 seconds maybe, okay? All right. All right, that easy. Now this might not be perfect. I wasn't really focusing on perfect. I just wanted something that you could kerf up and learn from immediately in one lesson. So we've got our speaker stand, let's call it, for a Bluetooth speaker. Actually, this will, put a Bose sound cube on top of those kerf trapezoidal end tables, and it actually improved the sound before I put the drawers on, but it's a lot of trouble. It's this easy, right? If you have any questions, post them on the Instagram before here, but here too. I'll be happy to help in any way. Know that there's more information coming, more detailed stuff on case construction, and I've got a process that I developed for laying out these end caps that I do end caps and then a top and bottom panel. Learned it all from someone else, not my idea, on another project that was much the same but a little different, or a much different implementation of it. I've got it's not so much, there's math involved, but it's not like a formula. It's very simple. So you can know exactly like how much room is going to be inside of your case, how much this will take up, and how much these kerf ends will take up, and we'll have the whole thing. I've got a process for that, and I can't wait to share it with you all, and the way I do it. And then we'll actually, in the last day, probably make a case, like a small case, like something along the lines of like the media console I made back in May. But if you have any questions, post them. Love to hear them. I'm doing this out of love and of kerfing, of the woodworking community, as a way to give something back. I have a policy in my own life of putting good back where I took it from with interest, and this is part of that effort. I had the help of someone I was very kind, didn't have to help me over the course of 2 years, and it really, I mean, it didn't even help me, not overtly, but just nudge me in the right direction and help me develop into my own very own style, and not a copy of theirs. It's something to be grateful for, and I just hope to do the same for someone else one day if I can, when I get better. At the very least, I'm passing this information around right now. I really cannot wait to see what y'all make, what y'all kerf. I want everybody that wants to do it, and I think that together we'll learn from each other and ways to improve the process and even make better stuff, right? Let's change it up a bit, guys. I mean, God bless our mid-mod elders. Utmost respect. My work will always have echoes of theirs, but echoes, right? It's time we had our own, thing, something that would be distinctly from our time. Not that this is it, but the only way we're going to find it is to try new things. So give it a shot. Let me know how it goes. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.